Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Ms. Starzak, I just want to kind of follow up and give you a little more context on the, you've been getting a lot of questions on Gitmo, and I think what it does, it reflects obviously an area of focus that this committee's been very interested in. The chairman, Senator Ayotte, all of us really. There's provisions in the NDAA that looks like the President's going to sign that. But I think you see some of the frustration because it actually represents a broader frustration with a administration and a White House that sometimes seems to blatantly, in a lot of our views, ignore the law and do what they think they can do despite the fact that the law or the Constitution says otherwise. It's been kind of a theme, and it crosses well beyond military issues. So let me just ask a couple of questions and, even a hypothetical or two that relate to this kind of. So the oath of office that the members of the military take, that actually all of you take, to whom or to what are you pledging an oath to?
Senator, the oath is to the Constitution of the United States.
Correct. And so all the members of the military, when they take their oath, is it to the same entity?
Yes, Senator. So
let's say that kind of like what the AG said recently in her testimony, that it seems pretty clear that under the current law and the law that the President's getting ready to sign, that the authority to close Gitmo resides with the Congress. And I'm not going to ask you if you agree with that or not, but let's say you do agree with that. Let's say you look and you're a smart lawyer, that you see that you think that's correct. It seems like the Attorney General of the United States was leaning that way in testimony. And it would be good to know, for written testimony, if you can provide your answer on that. Once you look at the NDAA provision, I'm not going to ask you here right now, but let's assume that you look at the NDAA provision, you get back to this committee, you say you think that the authority to close Gitmo firmly resides with the Congress of the United States. And then the White House, regardless of that, says they're going to do it anyways. And as the chairman said, there are some rumblings along those lines. You're the General Counsel of the Army. What would you do? What would you do? If you came out with a written opinion, maybe it wasn't public, but maybe it was internal, saying you can't do this, Mr. President, and then the White House overrules you and says we're doing it anyways. What would you do as a General Counsel of the United States Army?
Senator, I think if confirmed as Army General Counsel, my role would be to mitigate against Army risk of legal implications for the Army. So I would specifically look at the legal implications for the Army. I think that would be a significant challenge, obviously, if there was a disagreement. Ultimately, though, I would point out—
You thought the President was violating the law or the Constitution, and you had, in a written statement, stated that either publicly or to the White House, and they said, hey, forget it, we're doing it anyways? What would you do?
Senator, like I said, I think that the importance would be for my written legal advice to apply to the Army. I think you can obviously, there are internal ways to ensure that your legal opinion is heard. Ultimately, though, the lawyer for the executive branch is the Department of Justice, so it's really up to the Attorney General to make a final determination on interpretation of legal provisions or on—
So you wouldn't resign if you thought that the White House was undertaking actions that were clearly contrary to the law or the Constitution?
Senator, I think you would have to look very carefully at the circumstances. It's very hard to talk about that as a hypothetical issue. It's hard to determine what would happen.
Okay, so just for the record, in terms of your written comments, if you could get back to us on, take a look at the NDAA provision, take a look at what the Attorney General is saying, and if you can directly answer the question, does the President of the United States, in light of the NDAA, have the authority to unilaterally, without any congressional authorization, shut down Gitmo? Can you get back to us on that?
Senator, I will look at that.
Can you get back to us on that?
Yes, okay. Yes, Senator.
Mr. Parker, one of the big issues that I know you probably recognize, it's an issue that all of us are concerned about, are the high rates of suicide among military members, among our veterans. I know that you talked about in your testimony that you support efforts to encourage resilience among sailors and Marines and their families. I appreciate that. Do you have any specific initiatives or ideas to help prevent suicide among active duty members or members of the reserve? I'm a reservist in the Marines. Like a lot of members of the military, I've seen the devastation that suicide can have with regard to units. And are you familiar with the Clay Hunt Suicide Prevention Act that the Congress passed at the beginning of this year?
Senator, every suicide is a tragedy, and I know that I understand that the department is working very hard to try to do what it can to reduce the numbers of suicides. I know there are a number of programs in place that is currently administering to really help individuals come forward and seek help, to help others to intervene when they see that there is a situation that might lead down that road. And I know it's something that, if confirmed, is something I will take extremely seriously. I'll try to continue to implement and work through the programs that exist, and also see if there are other ways to help address this terrible issue. And I'll be happy to work with the committee as well in seeking the committee's ideas on how best to address it also.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.